Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be demonstrating an exciting new feature available in Simple GIS Client version 11. And that feature is the ability for users to now easily create their own custom data forms for displaying and editing attribute data associated with their shapefiles or other vector layer data. To demonstrate, I have a Simple GIS project file that I've created. And on some of my shape files here, I've created a custom data form. And if I click on the View Feature tool and click on the actual feature in that shapefile, you can see this custom form that I had created. And you can see that I have linked documents, I have photos involved, radio buttons, and etc. And in some cases, in this instance, I've actually created a chart object and add it to my form as well. So I'm going to demonstrate in this tutorial how you can create your own custom data form. And so I've duplicated the layers in my project up here. And so by default, the data form is actually saved with the layer in your project file. And the way you access it, if I double click on the layer, my table of contents, and bring up the layer properties, I see under the Layer Properties tab a new section in the lower right called Attribute Data Form. And there's a button called Custom Form Editor. If I were to click on this button, I would see that I'd get a new dialog box. And this is our Custom Form Designer, and it's a visual form designer. And the main section here in the center is the actual, page, you could call it, where you would actually be designing your form. You can see that you have a set of grid dots, which is just used for helping to align your controls on your form. These dots won't be visible when the form is in its runtime mode. And along the right-hand side is a set of toolbars or tool buttons that allows you to add different controls to your form. Along the bottom area is where you would set the properties for the different objects that you'll be setting on your form. So first of all, I don't have any controls, so the main properties I'm seeing here at the bottom is the actual form property. So I have two properties. I have a form width and a form height. And if I type in a value, I can see that the form width will change based on the value I typed in. In addition, if I simply move my mouse over the edge of the form till I get the resizing cursor, I can simply click and drag to resize my form. And as I click and drag, I would see my form width and form height properties change as well. In addition, I have a couple of buttons located here. One to save form design to file. So as I mentioned, by default, your form design is saved with the layer in your project, but you can save your form design out to a file if you needed to, and then you could reload that form design. And this may be useful if you're testing and want to save some different versions of form designs out to a file and reload those at a later date. So to begin, I'm going to place a label object on my form by clicking the Label Tool button and then just clicking on the form where I want this label object to be placed. I can see as I place it, I have a set of handles around my label that allows me to resize the label or to click, and I can drag to move the position of the label on the form as well. So I'm going to bring this back up to the upper left of my form. And as I said, I can click on these handles to resize. And then I can see in the lower portion of my dialog, here are my properties associated with my label. So the first one is the actual caption, and in this case I'm going to change that to represent the actual field ID for the data I'm going to place below this label. If I wanted to actually change the position by typing in, I could do that as well. I can change the font that I want to use for the label by simply clicking on the drop down and selecting from the list of available fonts on this machine. I could change the size or the color, and I can also change the styling of the font. So in this case, by just clicking on the bold, I've now emboldened my caption. And now I'm going to place an edit box control underneath my label by clicking on the edit box control and just clicking underneath the label where I want to place the edit box. Again, my properties here appear in the bottom portion of my dialog, and the first property I'm going to set is the actual field whose data I want to control with this edit box. So this is the data that will be displayed in this edit box and will be written to if I change the values in the edit box. I can also choose the data format for the data. So if this data was to contain any alphanumeric data, I could just leave it selected on any. If I only wanted to contain integer data, I would select that. Or if it was real numbers, I would select the decimal numbers radio button. I could also specify that I wanted this control to be read-only, which means even if the layer was in an edit state, this control will still be read-only to the user. I could also specify whether the data in this field associated with this edit box represents a file name to a valid document. And in this case, I could select this document link, which means when the data would appear on my form, it would appear as a hyperlink that I could click and have Simple GIS launch the document in whatever program was associated with that document type. If it is a document, I could also choose whether I wanted to delete any linked documents as features are deleted in Simple GIS. So if I was to check this delete linked documents checkbox, if I were to delete a feature in Simple GIS that had a valid file name in that text box, Simple GIS would prompt me whether I wanted to also delete that linked document. Again, I can change my font as well. And now I'm going to add another control. First of all, I'm going to add another label. Go ahead and change the caption to indicate the data that is going to be displayed beneath it. And then I'm going to add a combo box control underneath this label. So I'm going to select combo box. And combo boxes are good when you want to select the potential values that a user can input into a particular field in your layer. And so as I add my combo box, I'm going to select the data field. And then I'm going to come here to the list items. And these are the items that I'm going to limit the user to select from to add data to this field. So I'm going to add a couple of names here. And then I'll add another entry for NA, which is just not applicable. This is a good control to use to limit the selections a user can choose from for entry into your data field. Next, I'm going to add a checkbox control. And checkboxes are good to represent Boolean values. So in this case, I'm going to add my checkbox control to my form, and then I'll again select the data field. Then I want to tie to this control. And then I'm also going to change the caption for my checkbox. So in this case, this is going to represent a Boolean value of whether the tract of land has actually been surveyed. So I'm just going to type surveyed. And then I have another property for alignment. And the alignment just specifies which side of the checkbox do I want the caption or the text to appear. Of course, if I choose left, it'll appear on the left side of the checkbox, or I can choose right to have it appear on the right side. And then the other properties similar to the label and other objects is the font settings. The next control I'm going to add is a radio group. And a radio group similar to a combo box is good to limit potential values in a data field. So in this case, a radio group is normally good when you only have very few values that you want the user to be able to select from. So I have to first specify the data field again that I want to associate to this control, and I also have an opportunity to specify a caption for this radio group. In this particular radio group, I want to represent the predominant species of trees on this tract of land. So now I'm going to add in the actual values that I want to appear as radio buttons. So I'm going to type over this default item, which comes in by default. And I'm just going to have 3 different species types. available for the user to choose from. So I'm going to type these values, and then I'm not going to change anything related to my fonts. And now I see this radio group box that I've added to my form as well. Now I'm going to come back and add a new label, again just to give a descriptor for the field that I'm going to place underneath this label. So in this case, I'm going to add an edit box underneath this label, and in this particular example, I'm going to tie this edit box to a field that's going to represent a linked document. So in this case, I'm going to make my edit box a little wider, and then I'm going to select the field that I want to tie this edit box to, and I'm going to make sure I select this document link. And then in this case, I do want Simple GIS to delete any linked documents as I delete features. It's just a convenient way to maintain files and stuff on your hard drive, such that if you didn't need them, if they were strictly associated with this layer, and if the feature, once the feature was deleted, you didn't need the document anymore, you could go ahead and have that document deleted for you. Now, since this is a link, I want to change my font. I'm going to make it a blue in color and underline to make sure that it stands out as a hyperlink as the data is displayed. Of course, for this to work, you have to have the file name contained in this field that we've linked this edit box to. So obviously, a user could type in a file name, but there are some controls on here to make it easier while you're editing, and one of these is called a file select control. And so as I add this control to my form, I see that it looks like a button, and it has a folder icon on this button. And what this control is going to allow me to do is, when the user is editing, they can click this button to open up a file selection dialog box to allow them to pick a file from their drive, and Simple GIS would then place this file name automatically into our edit control. So one of the things I have to do is tell this file selection button which edit box control do I want to associate it with, so that it knows which control to place the file name in. So I see here I have this property called edit box control, and as I click on this drop down, these are the two edit controls I have, and so I'm selecting this edit 8 control. And then I also have these other options. So being a file selection dialog box, I can add a caption for the user here, and I can simply click in this property and type in a caption that I want to appear in my file selection dialog box. In this case, I'm going to associate PDF documents in this particular field, so my caption is going to be select PDF document to link. In addition, I can choose the function that I want this button to use. I can do a file select, which means select just a single file, or I could do a folder select if this was going to be a folder that may contain multiple photos, for instance, associated with a single feature. So in this case, for this field, I'm just going to do the file selection, not the folder selection. And I can also give it a default extension for my file selection dialog box. So I'm going to just do a star.pdf as a default extension. And then for the file filters, I'm just going to add here PDF files. And then the file filter has a pipe character that separates the description from the actual extension mask or filter. But for that, I'm going to do a star.pdf. And I could have multiple file filters that I can include in this. I would just need to separate each unique file filter with a semicolon. And so really it's the description of the filter, pipe character, and the filter itself. Now I'm going to add another label underneath this control. And in this particular label is going to be for photos. And I'm going to show you how you can link actually an entire folder using Simple GIS. And in this case, I'm going to reposition my controls, make them line up a little bit better. I'm going to make this one not quite as wide. And this will contain an actual folder. So this is going to be a document link as well. And I want to, again, do the delete link documents. But in this case, I'm not so much worried about the hyperlink because I'm going to show you another control that allows you to display photos. So I'll just leave it set to black in this case. And I'm going to add a new file select button. So again, if I had a folder that contained several photos all associated with a single feature, I could use this tool, and I have to again tell it what edit box control to associate it to. And I'm going to change the caption now that says select folder containing photos. So that's what I want it to appear. And instead of a file select function, I want this to be a folder select. So again, by choosing folder select, I don't have default extension or file filters to apply because I'm just choosing a folder in this case. So that allows a user, if there was a folder already containing these photos, he can just simply click this button and choose the folder. Another option is if you are running this on a laptop or tablet with a front-facing camera, I can add this camera control object. And what this will actually do is invoke the camera on your laptop or tablet, allowing you to capture a picture directly from your camera. And in this case, since this is a folder, it would put it in that folder that this control would be tied to. So I set my camera object. Again, I have to tell it the edit box control that I want to associate it to. So it's already set to that. And in this case, on my camera properties, I don't want it to capture a single image because again, I was looking at folders containing multiple images. So I'm going to select album as the camera property function, which just means I'm going to capture multiple pictures potentially. Notice also I have a saved photos path, and so this is just the path where I want to save the photos. By default, it's saving it in this root of where my shapefile is located at as a relative path. And relative paths are highly recommended since as long as your photos are either in the root or in a subfolder of where your shapefile is located, if you ever needed to move your data, you could just simply zip up the single directory containing your shapefiles, the single folder containing your shapefiles, and then all of your linked documents would be contained as relative paths, either under the root or in subfolders under your shapefile. Then you could move that zip file, extract it to a different directory or drive, and everything would still be tied together. I could also choose a different folder or path if I wanted to, of where I wanted to store these photos. And if I do, if it detected that that folder that I selected was a subdirectory under the root of your shapefile, it would store it as a relative path. And again, the relative path indicated by the 3 dots, the ellipse, followed by the backslash. Also, I have another property that I could also select, specifically since this is an album, in other words containing multiple photos. I could ask it, Simple GIS, to auto-generate subfolders based upon a unique feature ID. So essentially, if I was adding new features and I was going to be taking multiple photos to describe that feature, I could have Simple GIS automatically generate a subfolder for each unique feature ID, as long as I had a field that specified that unique feature ID. So if I choose this checkbox, then I just need to tell it what control contains the unique feature ID. In this case, it's going to be my track ID field, which I have this edit box control associated with that field, so I'll select that control. And so that again is going to have Simple GIS automatically generate those subfolders for me. Now I'm going to add an image thumbnail control. So again, since I'm specifying a folder containing multiple photos, I'm going to use this image thumbnail, which will show a thumbnail image for each photo in that folder. So as I add this control, all I have to do is, under the data field, specify the field that contains the folder path that has the photos. And I just realized I had set this edit box to the wrong data field initially. So I'm just going to correct that. And now I'm going to go back to my image thumbnail. And again, I've set its data field. And so it'll show a thumbnail for each photo in that folder. And then if I want it to launch that photo to get a larger view, I can just simply double click on that thumbnail to view the photo in whatever software program has to be associated to that image type on your PC. And so I think we are almost done with this form. With the exception, we just need to add a couple of buttons for OK. And so what this button will do is it will dismiss our data form, but also if we were editing, if I have the button function set to OK and apply, it would write any changes I've made to these attributes to our shapefile or vector layer. And so I'm going to leave the caption set to OK, and I'm going to add another button. Position this, and I'm going to change its caption to cancel. I'm going to set its function to cancel. So like the OK, it'll dismiss the data form, but it would cancel any writes to the shapefile of any changes in the attribute data. So it wouldn't write any changes to the attributes that I made. It would essentially discard the changes. And so now I'm going to resize my form to make it just fit around my controls. And that's pretty much it. I have now designed my data form. So I'm going to simply click Apply. And now my data form is almost saved. It isn't saved quite yet. If I was to cancel this layer properties, I would lose my changes. But as long as I click Apply on my layer properties dialog, it will save my changes to my custom form. I also have another property that says Prompt Feature Attributes on Add. And so if I check this box, what this does is if I add new features in this layer, as I add these new features, this custom data form would automatically be displayed as I add a new feature, prompting me to add the feature attributes for the new feature. So again, I click Apply, and now the custom data form is saved in my layer. Of course, I have to save the project to really save it. But if I just double click, bring back up the layer properties dialog box and click the custom form design, I see that I still have all of my form design in this layer. So again, I have to remember to save my project to actually hard commit those changes into my project file. So now at this point, if I was to just view the feature attributes for this layer, I can see now that I have my new data form, and I can see my controls. Of course, my combo box, notice that I don't have a drop down because I'm not editing this layer currently. I have my link document here, and of course if I hover over, I see I get the hint that says click this link to launch document. And if I was to actually click on that link, I see that it would bring up this PDF file and my Adobe Reader, which is what is associated with PDF files on this PC. Again, here's the folder to my photos. Here are the thumbnails that I was trying to describe earlier. So that's all the photos I have in this folder. And if I was to double click on one of these images, again, it would bring up that image and whatever program was associated with that image type on my PC. And notice none of my buttons for the file select or the camera are visible, once again because I'm not currently editing this layer. And likewise, just to reiterate, I don't see any of, for instance, the drop down from my combo box because again, I'm not editing. And on my radio button, I can see that all of these are just read only. I can't change any of these values. So if I were to dismiss this dialog and I was to come to my layer and toggle editing on so that I am actively editing the layer, and now if I was to view the feature attributes, I could see that for one, all of my buttons are visible for the file selection, my camera, also on my combo box. I now have my drop down list and I could select a new value. And I could change any of these values in these controls. If I was to come to my linked document, of course, now when I click on it, it doesn't launch the document because it recognizes that I am in an edit session and I may just be trying to type over the value. If I click this file select button, I see that the file selection dialog box appears, and I have my caption that says select PDF document to link, and I see that my filter is set to PDF files, and now I can choose a new PDF file, and as I do, I see that it places that file name in my linked document. Again, it didn't store any path information because it recognized that this file was in the root with my shapefile. Likewise, if I select the file select on my folder for my photos, instead of getting a file selection dialog box, I see that I get an option to choose a folder. And here, now I can choose my camera tool. And if I do, I see I get this new dialog box. It's called Simple GIS Photo Capture. Here I can choose the camera, whether it's my front camera or back camera. I could choose the resolution that I want to use to capture the photos. In this case, my camera on this PC is not active, and so I don't have any resolutions I can really choose. But if your camera was active, you could choose whether you wanted photo quality, high quality, medium, or low. As well as you could also choose the torch type for your camera here, whether you wanted it on, off, or in auto mode. So this is just the camera settings on this front tab or this first tab. If you clicked on the camera view, my camera was actually active on this PC, I would actually see the image that my camera was looking at here in this area. So I would see the actual video, and then if I wanted to take a snapshot of an image in my camera, I just click on the camera button. And then I could either decide to keep the photo or discard the photo. And it would show you the photo that you took, again, in this area here. If I was just taking a single picture, so if my camera was associated with a control that was not an album, but was just for a single image file, when I click Keep Photo, it would dismiss this dialog box, save the photo out into the appropriate area, and add that to my control and my attribute data. If my camera is associated with a folder, like a photo album, and I click Keep Photo, it would continue to take pictures and store those photos into that folder until I hit that Exit Photo Control. And so, one other thing I want to demonstrate real quick. Remember when we was talking about the linked documents, and there was an option that I could choose to delete linked documents. Well, this is what it looks like. So if I was to delete this feature, I now get this prompt that comes up and it recognizes it saying, you have documents that are linked to this feature. Do you wish to delete these documents? And so in effect, it gives you the list of documents that it detected as linked. In this case, it's listing a folder because all of those documents in that folder. In this case, those photos are linked. And if I wanted to delete, I'd hit delete documents. If I wanted to keep the documents, I would just hit cancel. It would still delete the feature, but it would not delete the documents that were linked to the feature. Also, because I had checked that property to display my dialog box on feature add additions, if I was to add a new feature, I see that I now get my dialog box to pop up where I can enter the values that I want to include. So I can choose a new document to link, as well as if I had a folder already created with photos in it, I can just come here and select that folder. In this case, I don't have any photos in the folder I chose. So this demonstrates the first form that I displayed at the beginning of our demo here. Now I'll move on. I'm going to toggle editing off on this layer, and I'll move on to our second layer. And in this case, again, I'm double-clicked on the layer to bring up the layer properties, and I'm going to go back to my custom form editor. And in this form, I'm going to demonstrate the chart object that we showed very early on in this demonstration. So I click on the chart object tool, and on my form design, I just click to drop the chart object, and I can see some of the properties I have. In this case, one of them is 3D%. I can also choose the chart type of bar or pie. I can choose a position for my chart legend. And then also see I have a list of available fields, which this is all the numeric fields contained in my shapefile that I'm working with in this case. And to add one of these fields into my chart, I simply click it and click on this add button. And as I do that, I see that it adds these fields to my chart. So I can see in my grid here, here's the different fields, the labels that are associated with those fields and the color. And if I wanted to remove one of these, I can simply select it in this grid and then click the remove button to remove that field from my chart. And so now I see that I only have two fields. And also notice these values that it's placing on these series. You really don't pay attention to it in this view. It's just random values that it's choosing to illustrate what the chart will look like. It'll be populated with real values based upon the feature selected when you're in runtime mode. So I'm going to go back and I'll add my field back in. I can change the label for these fields by just simply clicking in this label cell and typing in a new value for the label. So I'll do that for each of these fields. I'm going to change this. Instead of saying total, I'll just say male population. And then I'll do the same thing for the female. Also, I can change the color values for any of these by simply double clicking on the color in the cell, and then I get this color selection dialog box and I can just choose a new color. And so that's all it takes to add these. Again, I can choose the location of my chart legend. So I'm going to place my legend at the bottom of the chart. And now all I have left to do is add my buttons to be able to dismiss the dialog box. I'm going to add again an OK and a cancel, just like I did on the previous form that we designed. And then lastly, I'm going to resize my form to fit nicely around my objects. Hit apply and OK. And now if I come and I make this my active layer and click on my View Feature Attribute tool. When I click on a feature, I see that I get this nice dialog box with this chart object. And then I can see the actual values that's been populated in my chart. One of the things I did fail to mention is that your data forms also contain a standard right-click menu, and one of the menu options allows you to save attribute defaults. So if you were adding several features that had the same attribute data for some fields, you could save these defaults, so as you added new features, these attribute values would be pre-populated, saving you a few clicks or data entry steps. But as always, I hope you enjoyed the demo, and for more information, please visit our website at www.simplegissoftware.com.